Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating. We're looking at a massive transformation. How did India go from a deep, ancient tradition of manually mixing herbal remedies to literally becoming this dominant global pharmaceutical powerhouse that shapes modern healthcare? Well, it's an incredible story of science, policy, and just industrial scale on a whole other level. Let's get into it.
Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's just ground our understanding by defining exactly what pharmacy is. It's not just about handing out pills over a pharmacy counter. It's an entire, comprehensive branch of health sciences. We're talking about the whole life cycle of a medicine here, starting from that initial aha moment of discovery and development, all the way through rigorous quality control, dispensing, and finally, making sure patients actually use it safely.
So that brings us to the big question for today's explainer. How exactly did India manage to evolve its systems to master all of those incredibly complex steps we just talked about? How did it earn the title Pharmacy of the World? Think about it. How does a country with such ancient traditional roots manage to build a modern medical infrastructure capable of supplying affordable medicines literally across the globe?
Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the ancient roots of healing. Then, the birth of modern education. Third, the 1948 turning point. Fourth, Pharmacy of the World. And finally, we'll look at the modern pharmacist.
All right, part 1, the ancient roots of healing, taking us all the way back to before 1000 AD, right through to the medieval period.
So way back in ancient India, we see the rise of Ayurveda. It's one of the oldest systems of medicine on the planet, and treatments relied completely on the natural world, right? Plants, minerals, animal products. We have these amazing ancient texts like the Charaka Samhita, which catalogs drugs and diseases, and the Sushruta Samhita, which actually focused on surgery and medicinal prep. Later on, during the medieval period, Persian and Arab scholars brought in the Unani system, which led to these really systematic, beautiful herbal gardens. But here is the most crucial takeaway from this whole era. There was no separate pharmacy profession. None. The physicians themselves were actually the pharmacists, just manually preparing and handing out medicines to their patients using traditional methods.
Moving on to part 2, the birth of modern education. This covers the British period and the desperate need for reform. Now jump ahead to the 18th and 20th centuries. The British introduce modern allopathic medicine into India. They're building hospitals, setting up dispensaries, bringing in modern manufacturing. They even start focusing on drug quality control. But here is the glaring issue. Despite all this modernization, pharmacy was still not recognized as an independent profession. Most of the medicines were just being shipped in from Britain. So the system was getting modern, sure, but the specialized human expertise on the ground in India, it was really lagging behind.
Well, this dangerous gap in the healthcare system meant someone really had to step up, and that someone was Professor Mahadeva Lal Shroff. He's known as the father of pharmacy education in India, and for good reason. He saw that without proper, formalized education, the profession was just never going to evolve.
Professor Shroff really took the bull by the horns. In 1932, he launched the very first university-level pharmacy course at Banaras Hindu University. And he didn't just open a classroom and call it a day, he literally revolutionized the entire field. He introduced rigorous scientific pharmacy education, built the core curriculum completely from scratch, pushed hard for pharmaceutical research, and fiercely advocated that pharmacy must be treated as a respected professional practice. He laid the absolute bedrock that everything else would eventually be built upon.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 1948 turning point, legal legitimacy and professional regulation. So for thousands of years, progress was steady but pretty slow with Ayurveda. But then, the pace just completely shifts. 1932 hits with that first pharmacy course. And then right after India gains independence, the momentum absolutely skyrockets. In 1948, boom, the landmark Pharmacy Act is enacted. Literally a year later, in 1949, the Pharmacy Council of India is set up. By 1954, professional activities get a massive boost through the Indian Pharmaceutical Association. This super tight cluster of events right in the mid-century, that was the launch pad. That's what propelled India to where it is today as a global leader in generics.
The absolute crown jewel of that era was, without a doubt, the Pharmacy Act of 1948. And this wasn't just some boring piece of bureaucracy. It was a literal shield for public health. Just look at the steps the government took here. Step 1, formally regulate pharmacy education so there's a strict minimum standard. Step 2, start officially registering qualified pharmacists. Step 3, and honestly, this is huge, ensure that only registered pharmacists are legally allowed to dispense medicines. And all of this built up to Step 4,
drastically improving the overall quality of pharmaceutical services to protect the public. It finally gave the profession the legal teeth it deserved.
Now, to actually enforce all these new laws, they had to create a network of powerful organizations. I know it can look like an alphabet soup of acronyms, so let's just break it down really simply. First, you have the PCI, or Pharmacy Council of India. They act as the strict regulator, prescribing educational standards, approving schools, managing registrations. Next is the IPA, the Indian Pharmaceutical Association. They focus on the people, promoting professional development and hosting scientific meetings. And finally, the IPC, or Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. Think of them as the rulebook. They publish the Indian Pharmacopoeia, which sets the exact quality standards for medicines across the country. Together, this trio keeps the whole system ethical and safe.
All right, part 4. Pharmacy of the World, the post-1947 industrial boom.
Right after independence, we see this rapid, almost aggressive establishment of both public and private pharmaceutical companies. And India didn't just start making a few drugs. They scaled up the massive production of generic medicines like you wouldn't believe. They poured heavy investments into vaccine manufacturing and the super complex development of biotechnology and biosimilars. All of this naturally led to a massive global expansion of pharmaceutical exports. Which brings us to this really powerful reality, drawn straight from our source material. India is one of the largest producers of generic medicines in the world, known as the pharmacy of the world, because it supplies affordable medicines to many countries. And think about what this means for your everyday life. There's a really good chance that the safe, effective, and affordable generic meds or vaccines sitting in your own medicine cabinet right now are a direct result of this exact industrial explosion we're exploring today. Pretty wild to think about, right?
Finally, Section 5, the modern pharmacist and the evolution of the role. This really shows you just how far things have come. Look at the earlier days. A pharmacist's job was actually pretty narrow. They manually prepared medicines and they dispensed them. That was the whole gig. But today, the modern pharmacist is a highly specialized expert. They're deeply involved in clinical and hospital pharmacy. They're doing patient counseling and pharmacovigilance, which is the ongoing monitoring of drug safety. They're overseeing massive industrial production lines, ensuring insane levels of quality control, and driving cutting-edge research, development, and complex regulatory affairs. They are absolutely vital to making sure modern medicine is used rationally and safely.
So, we've seen an incredible journey in this explainer today, haven't we? From ancient healers manually grinding herbs to those very first structured classrooms in 1932, all the way to becoming a highly regulated global industrial powerhouse. But evolution doesn't just stop. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on based on our source material. With all these new opportunities rapidly blooming in clinical practice, cutting-edge research, and advanced biotechnology, what exactly is the next frontier for the modern pharmacist? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.